Stop and look at your bobber collection. You spent hundreds on floats in every color imaginable. You tried chartreuse, you tried orange, you tried glow-in-the-dark. And after a full day on the water, what happens? You come home with maybe 4 crappie if you're lucky. This isn't fishing. This is a slot machine where the house always wins. But here's what nobody's telling you. There's one color that triggers crappie strikes like nothing else, and it's been deliberately erased from tackle shops across America. What if I told you that a plain red bobber outfishes every high-tech float by 8 to 1? Not just a little better. 8 times more strikes. Works in clear water and stained, works shallow and deep. And here's the kicker. One red bobber costs $2 and lasts for 300+ fishing trips, while those fancy LED floats die after 12 hours and cost $18 each. This isn't theory. In the 1960s and 70s, red bobbers were the standard in every serious crappie angler's box. Field and Stream called them the crappie magnet. Tournament pros swore by them. Every tackle shop had walls full of red floats in every size. But then they vanished. Not because they stopped working, not because something better came along. They were phased out because a bobber that works for years without needing replacement is a catastrophe for an industry built on selling you new gear every season. This is the story of the red bobber, the crappie killer they don't want you to remember. But here's the tragedy. Even the few anglers who still use red bobbers make one critical mistake in the setup, and that mistake costs them 60% of their bites. Why? Welcome to Fish Zone, where we dig up the techniques the tackle industry buried. Stop for a second and really look at modern crappie fishing. What do you actually see? You see complexity masquerading as advancement. We've been conditioned to believe that catching crappie requires $400 in specialized electronics, $200 in UV-reactive plastics, and $150 in scientifically engineered floats, the promise to revolutionize your catch rate. It's an endless consumption loop for mediocre results. You spend $25 on a pack of premium bobbers per month, and the moment wind picks up or you snag on structure, half of them are gone. So you're a slave to Bass Pro Shops. Modern crappie fishing isn't about catching fish. It's a business model built on your perpetual frustration. Let's talk about efficiency. In fishing, results are everything, and modern bobber systems are mathematically wasteful. Check the math. Standard LED smart bobber costs $18 battery, lasts 8 to 14 hours of actual use. Needs replacement every season. Visibility range, 50 yards in perfect conditions. You need 6+ for different depths, conditions. For a season of serious crappie fishing, you must buy replacements, 72+. You must buy batteries, 24. You must replace lost units, 36+. Total, 132+ per year. You're the perpetual customer. The industry is the master. The red bobber is different. It's not engineered obsolescence. It's a simple tool that works through physics and fish behavior in any water condition. One red bobber costs $2. It lasts 5+ years. And here's the real kicker. It triggers more strikes per hour than any smart float technology. Do the math. Over 3 years, LED smart floats, $390 spent, inconsistent results, frustration. Red bobbers, $6 spent. Consistent results. Confidence. Red bobber catches 8x more fish with 1 hour 66 the cost. But you'll never see that comparison in a Bassmaster ad. So where did the red bobber come from? And why did it disappear? The red float wasn't invented by tackle companies. It came from commercial fishermen in the Great Lakes region who needed one thing: visibility that didn't spook fish. They discovered that bright red, sitting on the surface, was visible to anglers at 200+ yards but appeared as a natural shadow or floating debris to fish below. It was the perfect surveillance system. But its history in recreational fishing is even more interesting. In the 1950s, 60s, and early 70s, red bobbers weren't a novelty. They were the gold standard. Field and Stream actively promoted them in crappie features. During the crappie boom of the mid-60s, When anglers were pulling 50-plus fish days from southern reservoirs, serious fishermen embraced the red bobber. Why? Because it was a tool that required almost zero recurring costs. It was the most reliable strike indicator of that era. An angler could buy a dozen red bobbers for $8 and fish for 20 years without replacement. They worked in dawn fog, midday sun, and twilight. You could see them. Fish couldn't connect them to danger. But after the tackle industry explosion of the late 1970s and early 80s, everything changed. The 80s brought the era of bassification and tournament culture. The goal was no longer just catching fish. The goal was selling gear. Manufacturers needed to sell floats. Retailers needed to sell floats repeatedly. A bobber that worked for decades without needing replacement was terrible business. Simultaneously, the tech revolution in fishing exploded with sonar units, lighted floats, and glow-painted everything designed to look sophisticated, not to be effective. Red bobbers didn't fit the mold. They weren't flashy. They didn't cost $15. They couldn't be marketed as tournament-grade technology. So, tackle shops stopped stocking them, magazines stopped writing about them, and in one generation, a float that was once standard became invisible. They traded proven effectiveness for disposable products. But here's the irony. While they were busy erasing the red bobber, they accidentally buried the biggest secret about crappie vision. A secret that makes every UV-reactive, glow-painted float look like a cruel joke. Let's talk about crappie vision itself. First, the wavelength response. Crappie eyes are not designed like human eyes. They're designed like underwater predators. Red light penetrates only 15-20 feet in water before it completely disappears. To a crappie looking up at the surface from 8-12 feet down, that red bobber doesn't appear as bright red. It appears as a dark silhouette or neutral shadow, exactly like floating wood, a leaf cluster, or surface debris. Here's what that means. Zero spook factor. Now compare that to a chartreuse or orange bobber. Chartreuse reflects wavelengths in the 500-570 nanometer range. That penetrates 40-plus feet deep and appears bright and unnatural to crappie. It screams danger from below. If you're fishing a standard orange slip float, it looks like a traffic cone floating above their heads. They avoid it instinctively. Red bobbers work like camouflage. Visible to you at 150-plus yards on the surface. Invisible as a threat to fish below. It's the perfect surveillance tool. But the real power is in contrast dynamics. When your minnow or jig moves under that red bobber, crappie focus on the bait, not the float. There's no subconscious warning signal pulling their attention upward. With bright floats, fish are constantly evaluating two objects, the unnatural bobber and your bait. That split focus kills strikes. A standard LED float has another fatal flaw. It emits light at night. Great for you to see, terrible for fish behavior. That light creates a false feeding zone. Crappie approach, realize there's no natural food source, and scatter. You're literally training them to avoid your setup. Red bobbers are passive. No batteries, no light pollution, no electromagnetic interference. Just neutral physics working with fish behavior instead of against it. Think about this. Here's the comparison of real efficiency. Chartreuse, orange float, visible to you. 40 yards, visible to fish, 40-plus feet, warning signal. Strike hesitation rate, 60% plus. Spook factor, high LED light. Float, visible to you. 50 yards at night, creates false feeding zone, requires battery replacement. Spook factor, extreme red bobber, visible to you, 150-plus yards, appears neutral, invisible to fish. Strike hesitation, 15%, spook factor, zero cost over 5 years, $2. That's not just an advantage, that's domination. But like I warned at the start, red bobbers require proper rigging. If you don't know the critical depth offset, you're losing 60% of bites. Fish hit, you don't feel it. They spit the bait before you react. So how do you master the setup that turns this float from good into unstoppable? Here's the secret that transforms red bobbers from theory into a fish-catching machine. Ready to rig this thing the way tournament anglers did in the 1970s? Here's the exact process that guides on Reelfoot Lake used but never shared publicly. Step 1. Bobber selection size. 1.5 to 2 inch diameter, not tiny, not huge. Material. Cork or foam. Avoid plastic. It reflects light differently. Color. Solid red, no stripes, no glow paint. Weight capacity. Match to your bait. 1 to 16 Oz for minnows, 118 Oz for jigs. Step 2. The critical depth offset. This is where 90% of anglers fail. You're not setting the bobber at the depth where crappie are holding. You're setting it 18-24 inches shallower than the fish. Here's why. When a crappie strikes, they move up to hit bait. If your bobber is set exactly at holding depth, the fish pulls down after the bite and you see nothing. That 18-24 inch offset allows the bobber to dip, pause, or shoot sideways the moment contact happens. Step 3. Line to bobber attachment. Use a slip bobber setup with a bobber stop knot, not a clamp-on. Clamp-ons create resistance. Sharing felt tension. Sharing spit bait. The slip design allows the fish to pull line freely for 2 to 3 seconds before feeling any resistance. That's your strike window. Step 4. The setup in action. Cast it out. Let it settle. Now watch the magic. You'll see the bobber sit perfectly still on calm water. When a crappie approaches your bait 18 inches below, you'll see nothing at first. Then, right when they commit, you'll see one of 3 signals. The dip. Bobber drops 1-2 inches and freezes. The slide. Bobber moves laterally 6 to 12 inches smoothly. The dive. Bobber goes completely under. Here's the critical part. When you see the dip or slide, don't set the hook yet. Count to 2 in your head. The fish has the bait in their mouth, but hasn't turned yet. At 2, they pivot to swim away. That's when you lift firmly. The rod loads. The drag sings. You're hooked up to a slab. Warning: if you set on first movement, you'll pull the bait out of their mouth 70% of the time. The 2-second delay is the difference between 3 fish per day and 12 fish per day. Red bobbers work best in water 4 to 15 feet deep. If you're fishing southern reservoirs, shallow coves, or brush piles in 8 to 10 feet, this is perfect. But if you're fishing deeper structure or northern lakes in 20+ feet, don't give up. This setup is versatile. In deeper water, use a 3-inch red bobber with more buoyancy. When fishing in heavy current or wind, switch to a weighted slip float design, but keep the red color. It adapts like a chameleon while maintaining that zero spook principle. Timeline of results. First trip, expect 30 to 50% more bites than your previous setup. First week, you'll dial in the 2-second timing and double your catch rate. First month, you'll have total confidence and consistency. After 6 months, you'll never go back to smart floats where to get them. Local tackle shops. Ask for old stock. Some still have them in back rooms. Online, search red cork bobbers or classic red floats. DIY hack. Buy unpainted cork floats and use outdoor red enamel paint. Crappie forums and fishing swap groups often have guys selling vintage gear. A tournament angler in Kentucky is holding a stringer with 23 crappie, every single one over 10 inches. His 4th trip using the red bobber method. Before switching to this setup, he averaged 6 to 8 fish per day using $22 LED floats. Now he's pulling 18 to 24 fish consistently in the same lake, same spots. He calculated he's saved $340 in float replacements over 8 months. Today he says he'll never touch another high-tech bobber again. The strike rate speaks for itself, from 8 fish per trip to 20+ fish in the same waters. A beginner in Tennessee caught her first limit of crappie, 15 fish, on her second ever outing. She'd tried twice before with standard orange floats and caught 0. Switched to a simple red cork bobber and proper depth offset. Within 90 minutes, she had fish in the cooler. She said the biggest difference was seeing the bites clearly without spooking fish. A guide on Lake of the Ozarks tested red versus chartreuse floats on the same brush pile over 6 hours. Red bobber, 31 bites, 27 landed. Chartreuse, 9 bites, 6 landed. Same bait, same depth, same structure. He now rigs every client with red. His words, "It's not even close. Red is the unfair advantage." Each story carries the same refrain. More fish, less money spent, and zero looking back. We live in a time where crappie fishing is becoming harder. Fishing pressure is increasing every year. Access to good lakes is getting restricted. And the cost of tackle is absolutely insane. A basic crappie setup now runs $300 plus if you buy what the magazines tell you to. Mastering the red bobber is a declaration of independence from that system. When you use LED floats, you're renting your results for 12 hours at a time and $18 per rental. When you master the red bobber, you're investing in a tool that produces for decades. Imagine being on the water next spring in stained water after heavy rain. Everyone around you is getting skunked, complaining about the bite being off. But you, with a $2 red cork float and proper depth offset, are pulling slabs consistently. While they blame the weather, you know the truth. It's not the conditions. It's the method. You're not fishing harder, you're fishing smarter. This is your chance to break free from the tackle trap. Stop funding an industry that profits from your confusion and expensive innovations that don't work. Start mastering techniques that give you results for the next 20 years. This isn't just about catching more crappie. This is about independence and skill. You're not just learning a bobber trick. You're rescuing suppressed knowledge. You're not just catching more fish. You're escaping the system that wants you dependent on their newest product every season. If you're ready to try the red bobber method, smash that like button right now. That tells the algorithm this knowledge needs to reach more anglers. Subscribe to Fish Zone because we're dropping buried techniques every single week. And drop a comment. Do you fish for crappie in lakes or rivers? And what's the biggest slab you've ever caught? 127 anglers are already sharing their setups and results. Be next. The knowledge that works should never have been hidden. Stop funding the tackle industry for another decade. Start fishing with intelligence for the rest of your life. Fish Zone, where serious anglers learn what actually works.